Right now on Morning News Now, Donald Trump facing the fallout ahead of what could be another federal indictment. The new information about the special counsel investigation we're learning this morning from colleagues who worked with the former president during the 2020 election. Also this morning, a showdown at the southern border that's now heading to court. The Justice Department is suing the state of Texas over this 1,000-foot stretch of buoys in the Rio Grande meant to keep migrants away. Now, a defiant Governor Greg Abbott is telling President Biden, Texas will see you in court.
The buoys are a deterrent, and I think it's a positive deterrent.
Do you believe they will cause more deaths?
I don't know if it's going to increase the numbers, but it's certainly not going to help.
More on the controversy that's raising questions about human rights versus state rights. Plus, only Carly knows, a stunning admission and apology from the Alabama woman who went missing 4 days after making a 911 call about a child on the freeway. What she's saying through an attorney, plus the criminal charges she could face and the questions that still surround her disappearance. And feeling the heat, literally this morning, millions of people are waking up to heat alerts as those triple-digit temperatures spread fast. And now we're learning more about how the heat could be impacting your mental health. We'll explain how and what you can do to keep cool both in body and mind.
I was looking ahead to the weekend forecast, and I thought, nope, I don't want to look at this right now. I'm not prepared.
And everywhere across the country, we're feeling something.
Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for being here. We begin with new developments this morning in the special counsel's investigation into the events surrounding the 2020 presidential election.
We are getting new insight from witnesses who've been interviewed by the special counsel regarding former President Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the election. One of them is Richard Donahue. He served as acting deputy attorney general near the end of Trump's presidency. Also, former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Kerik has turned over thousands of pages of documents to Jack Smith's office. He worked with Rudy Giuliani to try to uncover alleged voter fraud. All this comes just 1 week after Trump first revealed he had received a letter, a target letter from special counsel Jack Smith, indicating a possible indictment is coming. For his part, Trump has denied any wrongdoing and has continued on the campaign trail. A fundraiser is planned for today in New Orleans, with more stops scheduled in Iowa and Pennsylvania later this week. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley is following it all for us this morning. Ryan, a lot to get to here, so let's start with Richard Donahue. He is a former Trump DOJ official. Remind us, why is he important, and what can you tell us about his meeting with the special counsel?
So I think Richard Donahue is probably best known for the burn that he had against Jeffrey Clark during one of these critical meetings. Jeffrey Clark was the individual who Donald Trump wanted to install. He was an environmental lawyer at the Justice Department with absolutely zero criminal experience at all, and believed a lot of these bizarre conspiracy theories about the election, including the notion that it was hacked by thermostats from China. So some really out there things. And Richard Donahue was also getting a lot of this information from the White House, some more bizarre conspiracy theories involving, Italy and IP addresses and all sorts of internet garbage, essentially, that was being passed along. But Richard Donahue, during one of these meetings where Jeffrey Clark was sort of speaking up, said, essentially, because he was an environmental lawyer, why don't you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill? So a nice little burn he got in there against Jeffrey Clark, the individual who Donald Trump wanted to make the Attorney General of the United States. And he knows a lot and Richard Donahue knows a lot about what was coming in from Mark Meadows, what was being sent along, what the White House wanted the Justice Department to investigate. A lot of these bizarre conspiracy theories that were being sent along.
Let's talk about another name that has surfaced, former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Kerik. NBC News previously reported that Kerik is expected to meet with the special counsel's office in mid-August. Now we know he's turned over thousands of pages of documents. How is he involved in all this, and what do we know about those documents?
Yeah, so a lot of these documents have to do with the investigation that was being, so-called investigation that was being run and looking into these allegations of voter fraud. And I think that that's going to help, show just basically how they did not have any real evidence here that they were talking about, how any person should have known looking at this, quote unquote evidence that they presented, that there was not legitimate claims being made, that there was no way that they would ever be able to close the gap, the tremendous gaps that they had in several states, how far they were behind Joe Biden. So, remember what prosecutors have to show here is not that Donald Trump knew that he lost, but he should have known that he lost, that there is enough evidence and that no reasonable person could have looked at this and said, hey, I've actually got, a shot here, or that this is real evidence. And I mean, if you just look at the affidavits, for example, that were being presented, that's something that I think any educated person would be able to figure out.
All right, Ryan Riley breaking it all down for us this morning. Ryan, thank you so much.
Well, tensions are rising at the southern border, where the federal government has officially filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas over the construction of a buoy barrier in the Rio Grande. According to the lawsuit filed by the Justice Department, Texas officials violated federal regulations by not getting authorization to install the barrier from Congress. The floating wall is intended to deter migrants from crossing the border illegally. It's equipped with wrecking ball-sized buoys and 1,000 feet of barbed wire. Governor Abbott sent President Biden a letter on Monday ahead of the lawsuit saying, quote, Texas will see you in court, Mr. President. In the meantime, Texas will fully utilize its constitutional authority to deal with the crisis you have caused. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke last night, calling the buoy wall inhumane.
Across our nation, extremist, so-called leaders demonize, target, and attack immigrants. In Texas, we see reports that authorities have pushed children and pregnant women who crossed the Rio Grande back into the river. People who refuse to provide water to other human beings who are in deadly 100-degree heat. Inhumane, outrageous, and un-American.
The buoy barrier is the latest escalation in Governor Abbott's mission to increase security at the border under his Operation Lone Star plan. Critics, though, say his tactics are unnecessary given the drop in the number of border encounters and crossings this year. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now for more on this. Hey, Julia, good morning. So we just previewed a little bit of what Abbott's response was to this lawsuit and showed some of that letter. Did we get any idea of what the legal argument, though, is that the state plans to present in court?
Well, I think that that letter really shows how they think that they are within their authority as a state trying to protect their own interests, whether it be taxpayer interest or otherwise, that they somehow then have the authority to step in and implement this immigration law. But I think that that's going to be a very hard argument to stand up in court because immigration is a federal law, and it's not clear that any of these efforts are really protecting those interests. They're spending billions on this effort. It's 1,000-foot buoy wall. It's not that they're, kind of cordoning off their entire state. They're really just making it more dangerous for migrants to cross. And it's not clear that it's really done anything to bring down overall immigration numbers, which, by the way, are at some lows. They're at the lowest point they've been since the first month that Biden took office. So it's going to be interesting to see how this stands in court. Previously, we've seen a lot of states, usually led by Texas and other Republican-led states, suing the Biden administration over their immigration policies. Now the shoe's on the other foot. We'll see where this ultimately lands. It could be that they have a friendly to Texas judge when they start. If this ultimately goes to the Supreme Court, as so many of these immigration cases do, it'll be interesting to see where the Supreme Court lands when they ultimately do want to give power to presidents, and especially a future administration, to be able to implement immigration law. But they also do want to look at states' rights. And so it'll be interesting to see how this case ultimately plays out. But I think it's especially really a political one as we move further into 2024. This is going to be really kind of the picture of the fight here, and whether people think that immigration is something that where immigrants need to be kept out at all cost, or whether they need to be welcomed into this country and given humane treatment. And this case perfectly lays that out.
Julia, I do want to talk a little bit about the Biden administration's response to all this and addressing the lawsuit. They did so during a briefing yesterday. First, let's listen to some of that.
What you see the governor doing is dangerous and unlawful, and it's actually hurting the process. It's hurting the process of what we're trying to do. And instead of wanting to, or undermining, I should say, instead of coming to the table and trying to figure out a way to work together, he continues to do this really cruel, unjust, inhumane ways of moving forward with a system that has been broken for decades.
So, Julia, setting the lawsuit aside for a moment, is there anything else that the Biden administration might do that we might see happen, just removing the barrier, let's say, without suing Abbott or without seeing how that progresses?
I don't think that's a showdown they're willing to have in the water. At least we haven't seen any indications that they're going to come in and physically take away what is the state of Texas property. But, they could surge more resources, it's all happening in this one area of Eagle Pass, Texas. They could surge more Border Patrol there to try to, dilute the number of Texas state troopers who are already there. They could do more to monitor some of these claims that we've already seen of inhumane treatment. It'll be interesting to see how this one really remote part of the state of Texas becomes a big picture of the immigration fight nationally.
All right, Julia Ainsley, thank you so much.
Now to a stunning revelation in the Carly Russell kidnapping investigation. Police announced yesterday that Russell has come clean about her disappearance and admitted that she was never kidnapped at all. In a statement, her attorneys say Russell never left the Hoover, Alabama area. Her lawyers added that Russell apologizes for what she has done, and she asked for prayers for the public. Hoover police say they are now discussing potential criminal charges in the case. This morning, folks in the Midwest and Northeast are bracing for extreme heat as that heat dome covering much of the country expands.
Yeah, it's expected to bring some of the year's hottest temperatures to those regions by the end of the week. And all this comes as the Earth really as a whole is on track to experience its hottest July, possibly its hottest single month ever recorded. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us now from Minneapolis. Hey, Maggie, good morning. So I know people in Minnesota are used to the cold, not so much this totally extreme heat that's headed their way later this week. I know Joe can speak more to that than I can, but how high are temperatures expected to get there and how are they preparing?
So basically, over the next couple of days, temperatures are expected to kind of top out around 97 or 98. And for reference, just as to how rare it is, tomorrow the daily high, guys, is 100. So this very well could hit that high, tie it, that record high, or potentially break it. But either way, again, as you said, exceptionally hot, 10 to 20 degrees higher than the average across much of the Midwest. And people are preparing here just like they prepare elsewhere. We're standing on a lakeside beach here in Minneapolis. This is expected to be packed. Places like the Salvation Army and other kind of outreach groups like that help out, more vulnerable people and potentially unhoused people. They're opening up cooling centers. And of course, guys, after seeing what's been happening in the Midwest, we also anticipate hospitals are bracing for potential heat-related illnesses as this heat wave, as you said, expands from much of the country.
Maggie, let's talk about Phoenix. Phoenix expects heat, but nothing like this. It just saw its 25th day of temperatures recorded over 110 degrees. That was yesterday. We're seeing an uptick in severe burns actually caused by contact with the hot ground. What are doctors saying about that?
Those are insane. I mean, doctors are basically saying that we're talking about severe and, in their words, potentially life-threatening burns, third-degree burns. Yeah, just from people touching the ground in Phoenix amid this ongoing heat wave. And here's more kind of what one doctor had to tell our affiliate about that.
And the severity of these burns in association with heat shock and heat prostration and dehydration is just really off the charts right now.
And guys, as if that's not alarming enough, doctors also telling reporters that this summer, amid this heat wave, they are treating, they say, 2 to 3 more times more patients, 2 to 3 times more than they do in a typical summer. So even for Phoenix, even for people that, unlike Minnesotans, are used to this is incredibly extreme, guys.
Maggie, just quickly before I let you go, it's becoming increasingly clear, according to research, we have a new report out about the fact that these heat waves are linked to climate change that we're seeing across the world here. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, a new report basically saying these heat waves flat out would not be possible without the man-made climate crisis that we're talking about. Our own researchers, our climate team here at NBC, also pointing out, as you said at the top, Earth right now on track to experience its hottest July, quite possibly its hottest single month ever recorded. And of course, experts say, and we know, but it's worth reiterating, this is expected to get much, much worse unless humans make a drastic change. Guys.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you very much. Stay safe.
So what exactly can we expect the rest of the week? Let's get a check on your Morning News Now forecast.
That means Michelle Grossman is with us today. Details on how this could all be impacting your week. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And we're going to see that dangerous heat continuing into the Northeast as we go throughout the next couple of days. So really, most of us will be above normal, with the exception of the Pacific Northwest, above normal temperatures. And take a look at some of these numbers, because it is dangerous coast to coast. We're looking at 285 million Americans over the next 7 days seeing temperatures at 90 degrees or above. And then even worse, 50 million Americans seeing temperatures over 100 degrees the next 7 days. That's a lot of people, mainly confined to the South Central states, the Southwest states, but even into portions of the plains as well. This is what it looks like this morning. Heat alerts, 41 million people impacted. This number will grow over the next several days. We're looking at heat advisories. That's in the orange color, from the South Central states into the Central Plains, even into the Northern Plains. So Pierre to Omaha, Wichita, Dallas, Corpus Christi, and then an excessive heat warning. That's for Phoenix. And we're going on a month and a half of really brutal temperatures there. So expanding heat, that's the big weather story this week. Once again, triple digits in so many spots. Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Lubbock, Dallas, Wichita. But look at Rapid City, 96 degrees. It's going to feel like the 90s. 92 in Des Moines. It's going to feel like 97. St. Louis will feel like over 100 degrees there. Then as we go throughout tomorrow, there it goes. It spreads off to the east. So Buffalo, New York, 88 degrees. Baltimore, 90. 93 in Cincinnati. And we still have triple digits. Oklahoma City, 101. But you're going to feel closer to 103. That's going to be the big story of the East Coast. You factor in that humidity, it's going to feel worse than it is. D.C., Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the mid to upper 90s. St. Louis, we're into the triple digits as well. But look at this. You factor in the humidity, it's going to feel like 105 in D.C. on Friday, feeling like 100 on Thursday. That's the heat story. Then, of course, that heat is going to spark some storms in portions of the northern plains, also the mid-Atlantic. With any of these storms that we've seen over the past few weeks, we could see some really heavy downpours that could lead to some flash flooding. So the mid-Atlantic, where you see the yellow, D.C., Salisbury, Maryland, we're looking at 11 million people at risk across the country today for winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Guys, we could see some hail as well. Low chance for tornadoes, but not zero. So we'll follow this as we go throughout the afternoon as well. Back to you.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
All right, well, today the Federal Reserve will start a 2-day meeting over interest rate hikes. And tomorrow we should know if those rates will go up and by how much.
Yeah, this comes as inflation worries have started to cool down, currently at 3%, down about 3%, the lowest we've seen in more than 2 years. Editor-in-chief at Investopedia, Caleb Silver, joins us now with what to expect. So first of all, the big question, should we expect a rate hike? If so, what's it going to look like?
Absolutely. About 0.25%, and this could be one last time, the last time in this long interest rate hike campaign that began in early 2022. Expect a 1/4 point hike. That'll put the Fed funds rate at between 5.5% and 5.75%. We haven't been there in a very long time, but this could be it. The Fed's probably going to hold rates here for a while and then potentially start cutting them in 2024.
So, yeah, walk us through what we could see ahead. You know, if people are like, okay, one more, what does that mean? Are we going to see it go up again? And when might that happen?
Yeah, probably not going to go up again because inflation has come down so meaningfully. Back in July of last year, inflation was at 9.1%. It has come down steadily. Still high prices for shelter, especially rent. Still high prices for food, especially dining out, because there's a lot of demand there. But inflation in general has come down. A lot of that is gas prices, but it still had a huge effect on the things we finance. We're talking about mortgages at a 7.2% for the 30-year. New car loans between 7 and 14% to buy a new car. And the average credit card APR, 24%. Wow. Those are very high rates.
Goodness.
So folks want those to start to go down, but it's still going to be a little bit then.
And they will, because these are very interest rate sensitive loans. So even before the Fed starts cutting, these rates are going to start to come down. Watch in the third quarter here and into the last quarter of the year, you're going to see those loans come down meaningfully. Hopefully that'll stir up appetite in the housing market, the new car market, and people will get their credit card spending under control because we are at record highs in credit card debt.
It's not just the Federal Reserve here in the U.S. Really, across the world right now, we're seeing interest rate decisions. What are we seeing across the globe? What does it look like as far as the economic standpoint?
In Europe, inflation has been very sticky high, much higher than here and harder to come down. It's a Eurozone economy. There's a bunch of countries in there. So they're going to keep hiking rates today and probably in their next meeting. Bank of Japan as well. But the U.S. is probably hitting that terminal rate. So this could be it. One last time, as they say. And then we're going to stay here for a bit and then come down towards the end of the year, early next year.
All right, Caleb Silver breaking it down for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Always, we appreciate you. Well, protests in Israel are intensifying after the country's parliament passed a controversial bill. It limits the power of the Supreme Court to overturn government decisions. The move is part of a broader judicial overhaul by Israel's far-right government. Critics say it will give the ultra-nationalists and religious parties that make up the government unchecked power to shape policy. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us from Tel Aviv with more on this. Hey, Raf, good morning. So what are the protests like today? We also understand doctors there are striking in response. Tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. The protests continue, the divisions continue, and this is what the front page of all the major Israeli newspapers look like today. It is all black, and it just says in small letters at the bottom there, a dark day for Israeli democracy. Now, this is an ad paid for by a tech organization aligned with the protesters, but it expresses the feeling of a lot of people in Israel today. As you said, those protests continuing overnight. Demonstrators were blocking major roads, police using water cannon to try to dislodge them. One woman we spoke to yesterday, she had tears in her eyes. She said she did not know what she is going to tell her children about their country's future. But Savannah, it is worth saying there is another perspective on this, that of Netanyahu and his allies. The prime minister saying last night this was a necessary reform to curb the power of unelected judges and make it so that the democratically elected government could carry out the agenda that the people wanted them to. The doctors' union, as you said, is also on strike today, which means it is almost impossible to get anything other than emergency health care in Israel today. Wow. Savannah.
What a visual, Raf, there with that newspaper ad. Tell us, so how are opposition leaders planning to challenge this new law? I mean, is there any chance the Supreme Court strikes it down?
Yeah, we're really kind of entering uncharted constitutional waters here. The opposition has gone to the Supreme Court, and they have asked the judges there to strike down the law, weakening the Supreme Court. And nobody, Savannah, from Netanyahu to the constitutional scholars we speak to the protesters on the streets, knows what happens if the court does that. This country could be facing a full-blown constitutional crisis at that point. It's going to be at least a couple of weeks before we understand whether the court is taking up the petition, what kind of speed it is moving toward on in terms of the case. But it is a very deeply divided country in Israel right now, probably more divided than in any other point in its 75-year history.
And Raf, back here in the U.S., I understand we got some reaction from the White House yesterday. What is the Biden administration saying about all this?
Yeah, it's been really unusual watching the White House regularly weighing in on what you could argue is the internal politics of an American ally. Before the vote, President Biden pleading with Prime Minister Netanyahu to hit pause on this legislation, not to go through with it given the divisions. I want you to take a listen to what the White House press secretary had to say yesterday after the vote passed.
It is unfortunate that the vote today took place with the slimmest possible majority. The United States, we will continue to support the efforts of President Herzog and other Israeli leaders as they seek to build a broader consensus through political dialogue. That's what we're going to continue to support, and we understand that the conversation is ongoing.
Now, Savannah, you heard discontent there from the White House. What you notably did not hear is any threats from the White House that it would take any action on this, including potentially cutting off military aid to Israel. Savannah.
All right, Raf Sanchez, thank you very much. Well, there's much more ahead here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a real case of Instagram versus reality. A travel influencer featured in the Guinness Book of World Records now being sued for her online posts, while critics claim she is being deceiving. First, though, after the break, thousands of tourists forced to flee as wildfires spread in Greece. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're back this morning with a rare inside look at a joint military base in Alaska that plays a pivotal role in defending our nation. NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt was given a tour of the planes and the technology that make Alaska critical to our nation's defense.
It is the jarring signal of another step in an uneasy and long-running dance between the U.S. and Russia. That buzzer sending an Air Force F-16 racing from its combat alert shelter near Anchorage to intercept Russian warplanes probing international airspace near Alaska. This mission, a drill, but real intercepts of Russian planes, an almost monthly occurrence. though fewer officials say since the war in Ukraine. F-16 pilot Brent Rist has flown in some of the encounters.
When we're side by side, we're not communicating with them. There is always the standard message that to let them know that they're approaching American airspace. And it's professional at all times.
Is the threat level increasing in Alaska?
I think the threat level is increasing.
Lieutenant General Dave Nahom leads the Alaska Command and the Alaska NORAD region.
Any threats coming from Russia, China, and that part of the world into America, they're first going to cross into Alaska airspace. This is kind of in the front lines for America and Canada.
All right, here we go. Start 3.
NORAD draws on U.S. and Canadian military assets for its air defense missions, from fighter units to Alaska National Guard tanker missions to a guard unit that tracks and IDs aircraft.
The fighters that are scrambled off on alert typically don't have a lot of endurance, and the distances in Alaska are vast, and so they require the support of tanker aircraft like this KC-135 we're flying aboard now.
I take in the view from a rear window as Chief Master Sergeant Wes Hudnall directs fuel into a pair of F-16s.
Offload complete.
Above a dramatic landscape.
Can the fighters on their own make it to where they need to go?
They can't. Our main goal is to offload the fuel to them so they can go off and do their mission.
And those missions are critical. In February, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Kendall and his F-22 intercepted a balloon just weeks after that infamous Chinese balloon crossed the U.S. NORAD was on high alert.
Once we got the notification, we launched, went north, and just waited for direction on what they wanted us to do. It was go inspect, fly around, provide information back to NORAD of what we were seeing.
Yeah, was it kind of a surprise for you to encounter that kind of a vehicle?
We knew the basics of what we were going out to do, but it was definitely interesting and it became real once we got up north. We're like, okay, there's actually something here.
The big picture of potential threats to North America is captured at places like this, a long-range radar station on the Aleutian Peninsula. It's a big picture, but some wonder whether it's wide enough.
Colonel Brianna Fulton coordinates support for dozens of sites, including this one in King Salmon, Alaska.
Can you tell us if these radar sites were able to see the balloon?
These radar sites were absolutely able to see the balloons.
So where was the disconnect?
The disconnect is primarily in how we filter the data.
Officials now looking at more raw radar data in order to better pick out slower objects like balloons, as it pushes for newer systems that can actually see over the horizon.
We do not currently have that capability, but that is something that will be coming.
NORAD is now leaning toward bringing AI into the picture to process data far faster than now, underscoring, however, people, whether in a cockpit or in front of a radar screen, will still be the most important eyes and ears.
Our thanks to Lester Holt for that report. Fascinating look. Let's get to some international headlines now. Raging wildfires are forcing thousands to flee popular tourist destinations in Greece. Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from London with that and more. Hey, Megan, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Good to be with you. That's right. We start in Greece, where those wildfires just continue to rage now for the 7th day in a row. The country says they evacuated more than 19,000 people, mostly tourists, on the island of Rhodes. They're calling this the biggest evacuation in Greek history. But the scorching heat continues, which is part of the reason why it's making it so difficult for firefighters on the ground to try and battle these blazes. Meanwhile, the UK government is not advising citizens against traveling to Greece. And tensions are rising in Denmark after another anti-Islamic act. On Monday, members of a group called Danish Patriots stamped on what appeared to be a Quran before setting it on fire next to an Iraqi flag in Copenhagen. The far-right group live-streamed on Facebook an incident on Friday. And then, of course, we saw another similar situation with burning of Qurans in Sweden. Many people, not just Muslims, are furious, which has fueled protests and demonstrations from Baghdad to Yemen. And guys, word got out that the Saudi Pro League offered a historic £259 million, which is roughly more than $330 million, for French soccer superstar Kylian Mbappe. So then NBA star Giannis Antetokounmpo, he found out about it. He sent a tweet asking the Saudi team, Al Hilal, to take him instead, saying, I look like Kylian Mbappe. And then, of course, Mbappe retweeted that with a bunch of laughing emojis. I mean, guys, I don't know. Maybe he could pass himself for his brother. They kind of have a little similarities there. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't blame him with that payday. That's pretty funny. All right, Megan, thanks so much. Coming up, his legacy lives on decades after his death. Up next, we'll reflect on how Emmett Till became a key figure for the civil rights movement on what would have been his 82nd birthday. Plus, they are called super agers, people over 80 years old with the mental capacity of someone in their 40s or 50s. So is there a secret to staying so sharp? We'll hear what researchers have to say. That's all next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Today, Emmett Till would have turned 82 years old, and President Biden is expected to designate a national monument at 3 sites to honor Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. In 1955, 14-year-old Emmett was falsely accused of harassing a white woman named Carolyn Bryant. 4 days later, he was kidnapped and murdered. After losing her son, Emmett's mother, Mamie, chose to leave his casket open. Photos of his body were picked up by mainstream media, and the case became a catalyst for the civil rights movement. Well, Emmett's cousin, best friend, and the last surviving witness to his kidnapping joins us now, Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. Thank you very much for being with us today on, I know, what is an important personal day for you, but also such an important discussion. First, I'm just wondering, how you're feeling today. What kind of emotions a day like today brings up for you?
I have mixed emotion. One, in that he has not been forgotten. Her words years ago were, "I hope you didn't die in vain." And the other emotion is the price that he had to pay to get us where we are today.
Absolutely. Also, we mentioned earlier that President Biden is expected to announce a national monument dedicated to your cousin, again, your best friend, also his mom, Mamie. This is happening today. When you first heard that news, what did you think? What went through your mind?
What through my mind is that there are changes being made in America, and I have lived long enough to see those changes take place, and we're appreciative and look forward to this decision and this incident to change further in America.
What do you hope this new monument is a sign of? What do you hope that the impact is that it has?
I hope it's a teaching moment for America, and I know it will be. Someone will be helped through this and to conquer racism and how to handle racism. It shows how far we've come and shows how much work we still have to do.
When you reflect on the fact that today would have been your cousin and your best friend's 82nd birthday, what do you think?
It brings kind of a smile to my face that the boy was gotten old by now. So I don't know him as an old man, but he's quite a character, and I could just imagine what he would have been like. He was a natural-born leader, so I think about the things he could have been.
Oh. Tell us more about that. You say a character. Just tell us maybe some anecdotes, or what's something you want people to know or remember about Emmett on his birthday, maybe a special or joyful memory the two of you shared.
Well, by nature, he was a natural-born leader. He loved life, and he enjoyed life. He never had a dull moment in his day. And I think young people can learn from him. Enjoy every day, make every day count.
Oh. Reverend Parker, thank you very much for joining us on a day like today. We very much appreciate your time and having this conversation with you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much. Now it's time for our weekly mental health check-in, and we're taking a closer look at how this heat wave could be impacting not just our bodies, but our brains too. Plus, I teased this a minute ago, they are called super agers. We will tell you more about people who are in their 80s, but they're keeping their minds sharp. Let's bring in Dr. Jennifer Hartstein for more on this. She's a family and clinical psychologist and friend of the show. Dr. Hartstein, always great to see you. Thanks for being here. Let's start with this extreme heat that we've been covering for weeks. Millions of people under some sort of heat advisory or warning in the U.S., but also we're watching this happen globally as well, potentially our hottest July ever on record. We know, of course, how this can impact your physical health when you're out, the dangers that can come without the potential hospitalizations, as we're seeing in places like Phoenix. But what about our mental health? Walk us through this. And are there ways that we can protect our minds from the impact of this heat?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that happens is we can't think clearly. You know, the heat makes us feel overwhelmed, and not just our physical body, but our mental body. And so we get more frustrated. We can't pay attention. We're not paying attention to detail. That's why people kind of make all these mistakes that we make. We maybe can't do things as quickly as we might want to. So we have to start paying attention. And the most important thing to notice when it's so hot is how are we sleeping? Because that can be the first warning sign we need to be paying attention to that something is going on in our bodies.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point there to think about that and pay attention to it. Okay, let's talk about these super agers. This is a new study in the Lancet Healthy Longevity Journal. It followed the brain activity of people over 80 years old, excuse me, but who have the mental sharpness of someone 30 years younger, maybe even more than that. Walk us through this. What are some of the factors that contribute to a sharper mind? What can we take away from this?
So this is really cool. And I kind of loved reading this study because what it does is it also tells us we can start now to prepare ourselves for this later. And what it's saying is these super agers are more physically active. They have lower blood pressure. They are kind of more fit, kind of physically, which helps, we know, keep our brains more fit. And so this is a great thing to be thinking about. If we start doing stress management, staying physically active, eating well now in our 40s, 50s, 60s, are we setting ourselves up for healthier lives in our 80s? And it might be a good marker to help prevent dementia from developing. So this is great for telling us what we need to be doing now, and that will help us later. So great messaging for all of us.
Yes, definitely. All right, also I want to ask you about a new trend taking over social media. Also a good thing. It's called micro joy. So tell us, what's a micro joy and what's the best way to practice it in our daily lives? How can we bring a little bit of this to each day?
Oh, micro joys, I think this might be my favorite thing we're talking about because it's so easy. And it's really based in the idea of mindfulness, right? And it's about being present in the current moment you're in, so that you notice the thing that you are enjoying in that moment. So it means in a time of chaos, you could be having a lovely cup of coffee, and that little 5-minute enjoyment of that cup of coffee could just bring you a moment of peace and groundedness that you need when the world is swirling around you. And so we can do it all the time. We don't have to make efforts to find it. It's happening. Petting your dog, seeing your child laughing, enjoying a beautiful sunny day. And you just need to notice it and allow yourself to be in that moment. And then that can kind of give you that moment of groundedness you need when everything else around you is swirling.
Absolutely. That's easy for us all to try to focus on. Dr. Jennifer Hartstein, thank you so much. Always wonderful to see you.
Thanks, Savannah.
Coming up, influencer under fire. A woman whose travel posts got her hundreds of thousands of followers now being called out.
Up next, the lawsuit against her and why critics say it's proof that what you see on your news feed may not be real life. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. An influencer who claimed to be the first woman to visit every sovereign country on Earth is now being called out.
Yeah, she's at the center of a debate and lawsuit over policing truth on social media. NBC News correspondent Noah Pransky has more on this unfolding drama.
There's a good chance you come across a travel post or two in your social media feed, but how do you know everything you see is legit?
This story is about a journey documented by a travel influencer, the drama-filled lawsuit that followed it, and even how the Guinness Book of World Records has been dragged into it.
This looks so good.
Cassie DePeckle says she spent 18 months traveling to more than 190 sovereign countries around the world, and by 2017, she had proclaimed herself the first woman to visit them all.
I became the first woman on record to travel every country.
She leveraged the achievement into a successful influencer brand. She authored a book, launched a fitness app, was even recognized twice by the Guinness Book of World Records, plus a whole lot of TV and media.
Yeah, I just decided I wanted to travel to every country in the world, but do so for a purpose.
The only problem, as one watchdog saw it, Cassie wasn't the first woman to visit every sovereign country.
There are a lot of social media influencers on Instagram, on TikTok, who are making a fortune promoting brands and products and services. People need to be doing that fairly.
That's Lauren Wolf. She's with Travelers United, a nonprofit that advocates on consumer issues. And she says they found at least 2 other women who documented the milestone before Cassie. Travelers United also took exception with Cassie's posts touting that she had been accepted to fly to space. And they didn't believe that she was following the law with her enthusiastic endorsements either. The Federal Trade Commission requires disclosure if a sponsorship is paid. So they put all these accusations in a lawsuit and sued Cassie for deceiving the press, her corporate clients, and the American public.
We need to know when something is an advertisement and when it's not an advertisement.
But the filing of the lawsuit was just the beginning of the drama.
I'm here in Ushuaia, Argentina.
DePeckel declined NBC's interview requests, but her attorney told us they deny all of the material claims in the lawsuit. And they've argued in court filings, among other things, that previous fastest travelers only visited 192 or 193 countries, and that Cassie's the first on record to visit 196.
For what it's worth, the United Nations only recognizes 193 sovereign countries, the U.S. State Department's 195.
Then there was the back-and-forth battle over edits to DePeckel's Wikipedia page, leading to the banning of one anonymous account friendly to DePeckel. Court filings also revealed the Guinness Book of World Records even sent a cease and desist, telling DePeckel to stop embellishing her accomplishments. DePeckel's attorney has alleged in court documents the nonprofit has unfairly targeted his client, threatened her business partners, and damaged her influencer brand with a malicious, cruel, and personal attack.
We don't want to bring these lawsuits. We would love for the FTC or the attorneys general to take these issues on themselves.
The FTC tells us they've been trying to set examples when big companies mislead consumers on social media. And in just the last few weeks, they've proposed new regulations that would outlaw fake reviews or the buying of fake followers.
The problem is that, the FTC doesn't have enough staff.
Which is how we find ourselves with so much turbulence between this jet setter and the watchdog trying to ground her.
Well, our thanks to Noah Pransky for that report. And as of now, the court has yet to rule on the merits of this case.
Financial headlines now. Verizon is increasing its wireless home internet prices.
NBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other news this morning. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Yes, so everything's going up in price, right? Well, Verizon is planning to raise prices on its 5G and 4G LTE home internet bundles later this summer. The company confirming the move to CNET, and it's planning a $10 hike for new customers for the 5G broadband services, taking it to $35 a month. Now, without the internet and wireless bundle, the home internet plan currently costs $50 a month. Verizon says non-bundled standalone pricing for the home internet service won't change. Spotify is raising prices for its premium plans in the U.S. and several other countries as the company looks to boost profits. Spotify will hike prices by $1, with the premium single starting at $10.99 a month, the duo at $14.99, family at $16.99, and student plan at $5.99 a month. Rival streaming services, including Apple Music, and Tidal, have all increased prices this year. Last week, YouTube announced its first price hike for its monthly and annual premium plans for the first time since 2018. And Wendy's has launched a new line of cold brew coffee with a nod to its famous Frosty dessert. The Frosty Cream Cold Brew line of drinks come in vanilla, chocolate, and caramel flavors. A small costs $1.99 and a large is $3.49, although, well, of course, that may vary based on your location. Customers can purchase any small for 99 cents through the Wendy's app with a coupon through August 6th, guys. I love a Frosty, so this sounds really good.
I haven't had a Frosty in a very long time.
Yeah, I haven't either. Yeah.
Same, but this sounds really good.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Coming up, they are the pride of Ukraine. Right now, some of the country's top athletes are training hard ahead of the 2024 Olympics.
All this, of course, comes at a time of war in Ukraine. More on how the fighting could impact the competition. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. The Queen of Salsa is getting her own coin. The legendary singer Celia Cruz is going to be the first Afro-Latina depicted on a quarter. The U.S. Mint revealed the design featuring her iconic big smile and her famous slogan, Azúcar, which means sugar in Spanish. The Grammy award-winning artist joins 4 other women selected for the 2024 American Women Quarters program. It's so cool, Joe, to keep seeing who they're revealing as being on a coin.
I love it. And I so rarely use cash or change these days, but it's a reminder to keep an eye out for these quarters.
Absolutely.
They're so amazing. All right,
yes.
Thanks, Savannah. Now, we are almost exactly 1 year away from the start of the Summer Olympics in Paris, and athletes around the world are training hard to be in top shape for the Games. That includes Ukrainian athletes, but many of them say they won't compete against athletes from Russia or Belarus because of the war. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea has that story from Kyiv.
Ukraine's Olympians are now gearing up for the Summer Games in Paris next year, training for key qualifying competitions. These young cyclists hope to do the same one day. But with the war in Ukraine still raging, many athletes are in limbo over whether they'll compete at all. For any athlete, the pressure of Olympic perfection can be crushing. For Victoria Onoprienko, she has to focus on every toss and pointed toe while bracing for air raid sirens. The Russians train in a calm environment. They have no worries. They have no fear for their lives or the lives of their families. They will never understand us, Victoria says. The rhythmic gymnast is at the top of her sport, spinning her way to gold at the European Championships in May. During that competition, a close family friend died on the front line. Victoria's father was fighting alongside him. He wrote a couple of days ago and said he was okay. I'm very worried about him. I really wish the war would end. I want him to come home so I can hug him, she says. On Ukraine's national rhythmic gymnastics team, every athlete, every coach has a direct connection to the war. You are very tough. I watched. Head coach Irina Derugina and her daughter, an assistant coach, tell me they turn up the pressure so their athletes can defeat their fears.
We've had a girl who lost a leg, and right now she's back recovering. She lost her leg from the missile attack in Odessa. She just competed in her first competition because the sport has helped her recover.
More than 300 Ukrainian Olympic hopefuls have died in battle since the war began last year, and hundreds of training grounds have been damaged or destroyed. The IOC says the Russian and Belarusian Olympic committees won't be invited to Paris, but they say neutral athletes from those countries should be allowed. Facing them on the mat is unthinkable, most Ukrainians say. Jean Belenyuk won gold in Tokyo. Would you be able to shake their hand?
Not.
No.
Mm-mm.
The Ukrainian government making the decision for them, planning to boycott every event in which a neutral athlete from Russia or Belarus takes part. It's unacceptable for them to be on the same tracks, in the same halls, the sports minister told me, even though troops from the front line text him asking when they'll see the next big sports victory. The decision has left many Ukrainian Olympians in limbo.
We don't know, can we take a part or no? That's why we're training, but we don't know about our future.
For Victoria, it's a difficult balance. We should boycott the games, she says, but at the same time, I think we should go out and fight. We are not afraid of them. This track was actually a venue for the 1980 Moscow Games. The U.S. and other countries boycotted those games because of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. Now, more than 40 years later, Ukrainian athletes are hoping another war doesn't ruin their quest for gold.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much for that reporting. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Don't go anywhere. Good morning, and thanks for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the battle over the border is heating up with a new lawsuit filed by the Justice Department against the state of Texas. At issue, this floating barrier in the Rio Grande meant to keep migrants from crossing. But both the White House and Texas Governor Greg Abbott are saying this morning about this latest development. Also, new developments in the special counsel investigation into the 2020 election. We've got the latest on Jack Smith's investigation into former President Donald Trump's alleged efforts to overturn those results. Among those new developments this morning, the thousands of pages of documents that Bernard Kerik and Rudy Giuliani have turned over to investigators and how they could impact the case. Plus, coming clean, it was a missing person mystery that captivated America. Now a stunning confession from Carly Russell. Her disappearance was all a hoax. We'll have more on what police say happened, plus the big questions that still remain unanswered. And we have saved you a seat at the kitchen table of a woman-owned cookware empire. They've got one mission, bringing people together through what else? Food. Looking forward to bringing you that story. We're going to begin this hour with the legal battle brewing between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the Biden administration over the construction of a buoy barrier at the southern border.
The Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas after the governor refused to move the floating wall out of the Rio Grande. Governor Abbott is firing back, telling President Biden he will see him in court. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now from Eagle Pass, Texas, with the latest on this lawsuit. Hey, Priscilla, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. No court date has been set yet, but already this is shaping up to be quite the legal fight. On one hand, you have the federal government accusing Governor Abbott of placing this buoy in the river in violation of federal law. On the other hand, you have a defiant Governor Abbott accusing the Biden administration of trying to hamper his efforts to secure the border. This morning, the Rio Grande River separating the U.S. and Mexico has become the latest flashpoint in the battle over border security. The Justice Department now suing the state of Texas, demanding the removal of this 1,000-foot line of buoys designed to prevent migrants from crossing the river. The government alleges Texas installed it without federal authorization. Texas Governor Greg Abbott responding overnight.
Texas is defending its sovereignty and its constitutional right to secure the border of our state and our country.
This Honduran couple told us they saw the buoys and went around them to cross the border, let through a fence on private property as the 8 months pregnant woman was having trouble walking any further. The White House calls the barrier dangerous and unlawful, arguing Abbott is trying to undercut the Biden administration's security efforts. With monthly illegal border crossings now at a 2-year low, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
The one person that is sowing chaos is Governor Abbott. That's what he continues to do, political stunts in an inhumane way.
Earlier Monday, Abbott writing in a letter to President Biden, Texas will see you in court, Mr. President. Hugo Urbina owns a pecan orchard on the river and tells us migrant crossings are frequent. He says he supports some of Abbott's border security efforts, but calls the buoys inhumane and ineffective.
It's not really hindering keeping anybody from crossing.
Still, immigration advocates say they fear migrants will drown while attempting to cross the buoys. Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez represents Eagle Pass.
Do you believe the buoys are actually working?
It's going to maybe be a deterrent. There has to be more that prevents people from even entering that water.
And as for what comes next, at this hour, the DOJ has not filed for an emergency injunction, which means for now, the buoys will stay in the water. Joe, Savannah.
All right, Priscilla Thompson, thank you so much.
Now to Washington, where there are new developments in the investigation into the events surrounding the 2020 election. A grand jury convened by special counsel Jack Smith is looking into former President Donald Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Trump received a letter a little more than a week ago notifying him that he was a target of that investigation. And now we are learning a vote on whether to indict Trump could come as soon as today. For more, we're joined by NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And so, Ken, the grand jury has recently been hearing from witnesses. What can you tell us about that?
Good morning, Joe. That's right. They heard last week from William Russell, a special assistant to the president, not a household name, but someone apparently who was asked questions about President Trump's state of mind and his knowledge about the extent to which he knew there wasn't fraud in the election. And that's just an example of how this investigation has been chugging along, even as Donald Trump got that target letter, which means we are, in fact, on indictment watch. And we know that this grand jury meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So as you said, it's possible it could vote today. We don't know. It's a secret process. But given that Donald Trump got a target letter and almost all recipients of target letters are indicted, we are watching for action today and this week, Joe.
Ken, I want to ask you about another part of the investigation. Bernard Kerik, he was the former New York City police commissioner, worked with Rudy Giuliani to try and find voter fraud after the 2020 election. He has turned over thousands of pages of documents. What do we know about those documents?
Very little, Joe, but it stands to reason that those documents describe Mr. Kerik's efforts to work with Rudy Giuliani in this effort to uncover fraud, which we know did not exist in the 2020 election, and it's really part of the special counsel's effort to gather every stitch of evidence involving these various plots across the country to allege fraud. Carrick was right in the thick of it, and it's also an example of how the investigation goes on and may continue to go on even post-indictment. We know in the other case, in the Mar-a-Lago case, the special counsel is continuing to hear from witnesses even after that case has been indicted, and Mr. Carrick's attorney said that he expects to go in and talk about these documents in 2 weeks with the special counsel. We may very well have an indictment in this case before then, and the special counsel no doubt will still want to hear from Mr. Carrick because it could take a year or more for this case to go to trial, and they will continue to investigate as that unfolds, Joe.
All right, Ken Delaney and Ken, thank you so much.
Well, turning now to new developments in the Carly Russell kidnapping case. Yesterday, in a statement provided by her attorneys, Russell came clean about her disappearance, admitting that she had never been abducted. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from Miami with the very latest on this. Hey, Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. You just think about all of the resources and efforts that went into finding Carly Russell. Now, yesterday there was a scheduled meeting between her attorney and investigators, which turned into, Savannah, an email exchange and then an admission that the whole thing was made up. The only questions right now, why did she do it and where did she go for those 2 days?
This morning, a stunning public confession in the mysterious disappearance of Carly Russell.
There was no kidnapping.
Hoover's police chief reading a statement on Monday provided by Russell's attorney on behalf of the 25-year-old nursing student.
My client did not see a baby on the side of the road. My client did not leave the Hoover area, but this was a single act done by herself.
For days, the investigation captured national attention, but skepticism quickly grew when police were unable to verify her story.
Where do you think she went and how would you characterize what happened here?
That's the $100 question.
Earlier this month, Russell went missing for just over 48 hours after calling 911 to report a toddler walking alone on the interstate.
Hi, I am on Interstate 459, and there is a kid just walking by themselves.
In her initial statement to police, Russell claimed that she was abducted by a man with orange hair and a woman who brought her to a home, forced her to undress, and took nude photos of her. Throughout the investigation, police say they found no evidence of an abandoned toddler, also detailing internet searches made by Russell shortly before the incident, including what's the cost of an Amber Alert, a one-way bus ticket from Birmingham to Nashville, and the 2008 film about an abduction, Taken.
My client apologizes for her actions to this community. We ask for your prayers for Carly as she addresses her issues and attempts to move forward, understanding that she made a mistake in this matter.
And no charges have been filed at the moment, but Hoover police say they are in active conversations right now with the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office about possible criminal charges. And Russell's boyfriend did post on Facebook that he was blindsided by this entire false narrative and disgusted by the entire outcome. Savannah, back to you.
All right, Sam Brock, thank you very much.
Now to the extreme heat, which will soon cover much of the country. The record temperatures we're seeing in cities like Houston, Phoenix, and Miami are heading toward the Northeast and Midwest. And forecasters say by the end of the week, those areas could also be flirting with record highs. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us now from Minneapolis with the latest. Maggie, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, it's bizarre to be talking about these potentially record-breaking temperatures in a place like Minneapolis, which, as you know, is normally synonymous with bone-chilling cold. But places like this, kind of lakeside beaches, expected to be packed this week as people try to escape that near triple-digit heat as that heat wave that's been baking the Southwest basically spreads.
The relentless heat now affecting even more of the country.
Real hot, 100 degrees. Triple digits for what, 4 days?
From St. Louis to South Florida.
There's nothing you can really do. There's nothing you can do. It's hot.
To Arizona, where patients are being hospitalized for severe, even life-threatening third-degree burns caused by contact with the scorching ground. Doctors at the burn center at Valleywise Hospital in Phoenix say they're currently treating 2 to 3 times more patients than in a typical summer. Health experts say high temperatures are especially dangerous for pregnant women like Kristen Butts, who recently moved from Buffalo to sweltering Fort Worth, Texas.
I literally felt my skin burning, and I'm like, no,
this doesn't feel right.
But everyone, no matter how fit, can be vulnerable to heat-related illnesses. 24-year-old mountain biker Kai Torres Bronson recently lost his life while helping dehydrated hikers in the desert east of San Diego. His passing, a sobering reminder of how quickly extreme heat can become deadly, even if you're young and athletic.
And our hearts go out to the family of that mountain biker. Back here in Minneapolis, by the way, temperatures tomorrow forecasted to hit a high of 97 degrees, just shy of the daily record here of 100. And then more broadly, amid our climate crisis, scientists say Earth is on track to experience potentially its hottest July and quite possibly its hottest single month ever recorded. And of course, scientists say amid our climate crisis, this is all expected to get much worse unless humans make drastic changes. Joe.
Right. Maggie Vespa reporting from Minneapolis. Maggie, thank you.
And staying with extreme weather, let's get out to NBC News foreign correspondent Josh Letterman. He is in Greece on these wildfires we have been talking about for a few weeks now. Josh, first of all, I understand we weren't even sure we'd be able to discuss this with you live because of the conditions where you are. You potentially were going to have to move, but we know we can see behind you. These are still burning strong. Thousands of people being forced to evacuate. Tell us the latest that you are seeing there on the ground.
Well, we had to move a few times. It just goes to show you, Savannah, just how quickly this fire is moving. A few minutes ago, maybe a half hour or so ago, we were farther in this direction where back then it was totally safe. There was no fire. The fire was way off in the distance. And then all of a sudden, an area that had been totally safe started to go up in flames. Not only one large fire, but several smaller fires breaking out around it. Those little embers going from one area to another. And suddenly, police officers, volunteers, trying to put it out with their feet, trying to use branches of trees to stamp out this fire. But this is something that is raging throughout this island of Rhodes now for a week now. You can see over here, we're in the town of Gennady, where yesterday the flames made it all the way to the coast in some cases. There are people handing out water. There is an active evacuation effort here in the anticipation that even this operation at some point may need to move farther away if the flames actually get closer to where we are now. And we know that firefighters are using about 10 airplanes, 8 helicopters to try to put this out. But right now, the heavy winds and the extreme heat are really making it difficult to get any kind of progress on this, Savannah.
Josh, also, there's a scientific study out. It says that these extreme heat waves we are seeing around the world, I mean, we're just talking about this with Maggie Vespa in Minnesota. Now we're talking to you in Greece, that this would have been virtually impossible without climate change. Tell us more about these findings. What does this report say?
That's right. Well, scientists have been looking not only at the intensity of this heat wave, but also the length of it. Here in Greece, the National Meteorological Association is predicting this could last 16 to 17 days, which would be the longest heat wave in the history of the country of Greece. And scientists believe that the buildup of those greenhouse gases from human-caused emissions that have built up in the atmosphere, trapping heat, making this last longer, that obviously makes the ground drier, creates the perfect conditions for the kind of wildfires we're seeing here.
Hey, Josh, also there's been videos online of people evacuating. I know there's a group behind you, even tourists who are at certain hotels that have to evacuate. What are you just hearing from people on the ground about how they're handling all this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a place that people come on holiday, right? It's a beachside paradise. Yeah. And we've been talking with tourists here who came for a little fun in the sun, ended up sleeping on the floors of basketball stadiums, in cots donated that are being put up in classrooms of high schools because there's simply nowhere else to go after their hotels burned down. Some of them had to flee their hotels within minutes with nothing with them. Some of them were still in their bathing suits, walk several miles, try to get on a bus, in some cases a boat, any way they could get to safety. Now, most of them are just trying to get off of this island as airlines are bringing in additional aircraft to repatriate people whose holidays have clearly been ruined.
Oh my goodness. All right, Josh Letterman, stay safe. Great reporting for us from the ground. Thank you so much.
Let's take a closer look at how the severe heat in the U.S. could be impacting you in your week. And a closer look at your Morning News Now weather.
Michelle Grossman is back with us for that. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Good morning. And we're going to see that heat expanding. So that heat dome is still tacked in place. It's not budging. It's not moving, but it's expanding. So we're going to see most of us looking at above average temperatures with the exception of the Pacific Northwest. But take a look at this map. So much going on, right? So we're watching that dangerous heat once again, record highs in the Southwest, very hot, very humid in the South Central states. That heat and humidity is going to spark some storms along with a frontal boundary in parts of the northern plains. That's going to be later on today with that daytime heating. And then we're looking at some severe storms in the mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast. And once you factor in that humidity, we have a lot of moisture in the air. That's going to bring some really heavy downpours. Smoky throughout the northern plains, the Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley. And then we're going to see some rain also in the Sunshine State. We're looking at some really high temperatures there, some humidity levels really high as well. So today, this morning, 41 million people impacted by heat alerts. I can promise you that number is going to grow as we go throughout the next couple of days as we see this heat dome really taking hold into the Northeast. But for today, we're looking at heat advisories from the South Central states into the Central Plains and Northern Plains. Southwest, we're looking at excessive heat warnings. Phoenix, you're on day 44 of just excessive heat. So we're looking at temperatures once again into the triple digits. Miami, a heat advisory. You're going to be warm once again, and you're going to be feeling like closer to 100 once we factor in that humidity. So many triple digits on this map. Las Vegas, Phoenix, Albuquerque, El Paso, Lubbock, Dallas 103, that's 6 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. But notice how north it goes, right? So we're looking at Rapid City, 96 degrees today. That's nearly 10 degrees above average. St. Louis, 97, same story, 99 degrees in Denver. We could hit that triple digit mark as we go throughout the afternoon hours. And then tomorrow, we're going to see this heat expanding into portions of the Northeast. So now Baltimore, 90 degrees tomorrow, 88 in Buffalo. That's nearly 10 degrees above average. Cincinnati, 93, and still some triple digits on the map. Oklahoma City, Little Rock, and Kansas City pretty close to the 100-degree mark. Summer swelter continues late this week. Washington, D.C., Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Temperatures in the upper 90s, 99 on Friday. You factor in the humidity. It's going to feel like 105 by Saturday. Raleigh in the upper 90s. Springfield, we're looking at temperatures in the triple digits. Omaha, you're going to be hot too, 100 degrees on Friday. So that's the heat story. It continues to go on. And the projection for next week looks like we're going to be just as hot. And then NOAA put out their August outlook, and we're looking really warm too for the month of August. Most of us looking at really above average temperatures. Now, as far as the severe weather threat, we're talking about the northern plains, so the Dakotas. Also looking at the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, 11 million people at risk. Could see some really gusty winds. That's going to bring down some trees. It could take off some roofs. We're also looking at damaging hail. Low tornado risk with any of these storms, but it's not zero. So we're going to watch that very, very closely. And we're concerned about some very heavy rainfall. And as you can see, we kind of overlaid the radar on top of this to show you what we're seeing right now. We have a cluster of storms in central Pennsylvania. This is going to blossom throughout the afternoon once we use that daytime heating, the energy from the sun to get these storms really going. We're going to see a lot of lightning, and of course can see a lot of rainfall, downpours with these, and that could lead to the flash flooding. So we're going to watch that as we head throughout the afternoon hours. Tomorrow, that severe weather threat moves to portions of the Great Lakes, so the Midwest, Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus, and Annapolis. And notice that orange shading. That is enhanced risk. So that's a likelier spot for seeing the strong storms. 36 million people at risk. Sort of the same scenario with winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, some hail and a few tornadoes. And here's the heavy rainfall. Where we see these downpours, we could see hourly rates of 1 inch or greater. And over the past few weeks, we've heard the stories, we've seen the images of some really heavy downpours. The water doesn't have anywhere to go. So then we start to see that flooding. So this is the setup. We have a pair of boundaries, a pair of cold fronts that are moving. They're going to bring isolated showers, but heavy downpours for parts of the East Coast. That severe risk from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia. Then tomorrow, that front's going to move into the Great Lakes. We have that enhanced risk for the Great Lakes. Severe risk from Iowa, eastward through Ohio. Also concerned about air quality. We have ozone. We have smoke pollution. That's for portions of the Midwest into the Great Lakes and also the Ohio Valley. So you guys, we remain so busy. We're looking at so many factors here. The heat, the ozone, which is so dangerous and so tough on our bodies, and also looking at the chance for severe storms. And then by Thursday, we're looking at that severe weather returning in parts of the Northeast. So that's going to be something to watch, too, where 56 million people are going to be affected. But the air quality is poor, unhealthy in portions of the Midwest. So we're going to continue to watch that story as well. Back to you.
Busy week. We appreciate you staying on top of it. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Coming up on this hour of Morning News Now, parents, listen up. We'll bring you a new study on how allergies could develop in your kids. The doctor is in. Coming up.
But first, a controversial blockade on Capitol Hill that now has Senate Democrats calling on one top Republican for an intervention. We've got the latest from Washington next.
We're back now with the latest on Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's block on hundreds of military promotions and appointments. Democrats on the Senate Armed Services Committee sent this letter to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, urging him to call on Senator Tuberville to end his hold on the appointments.
Tuberville is an Alabama Republican who's also on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He has been blocking the promotion of hundreds of service members over his opposition to several Defense Department policies. NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor joins us now with more. Hey, Sahil, good morning. So what are the policies that Senator Tuberville is protesting, and how many people exactly are currently impacted by this blockade?
Hey, guys. Well, this blockade has been going on since March, and Senator Tuberville is showing no signs of letting up at this point. He's protesting the Pentagon's abortion travel policy, which allows service members to travel out of state and get reimbursed in the event that they need to get an abortion. Tuberville says this is an inappropriate use of taxpayer money and has decided to use this extraordinary tactic. You see the numbers on the screen there. There are 265 nominations pending. It could rise to 650 by the end of the year. 31% of the military's general and flag office is blocked from moving forward. Generally, this is the sort of thing that happens on the Senate floor by unanimous consent. They do this so quietly, so unceremoniously that most people don't even know it. But Tuberville has decided to use this as a place to make his stand, to do something extraordinary in protest of a policy that he thinks is bad.
So, Sahil, Senator McConnell's office has not addressed the letter specifically, but his press secretary did write on Twitter, did Democrats forget that they're in the majority and control the floor? Why can't the Democrats just push these nominations through?
Well, Savannah, they technically can push these nominations through, but to do them one at a time takes hours each. So if you do the math, and I put this to a Democratic senator, why don't you just vote on these nominees? And the senator told me that it would take 6 to 12 months to vote on nominees of Senate time, that they cannot spend anything else doing to do something that they would normally do in one night. So they believe this is on Tuberville to relinquish his hold, to do what everyone else has done. And if you don't like a policy, use the normal legislative process to try to get it overturned. They're willing to offer him a vote on the NDA of some sort, but he wants a higher threshold where he wants the Pentagon policy to be rescinded and then for Congress to vote to affirmatively place it. And that's not something Democrats are willing to do at this point. So the answer is yes, technically they can do it, but it would take so much time that it becomes functionally unrealistic.
So does Senator Tuberville have GOP support for his blockade? And other than changing the policy, is there a way forward?
There isn't much support for the specific tactic he's using, Joe. There is a lot of support for his policy endgame. Republicans will almost unanimously agree that the Pentagon's abortion travel policy isn't good and should be reversed, but almost none of them are willing to support Tuberville's tactic in blocking military and flag officers in protest of that. They believe it is something that could compromise national security. But this is also something that Tuberville is using to his advantage. He's not facing much pressure from within his party to back off, which is why he feels comfortable pursuing it. Not a lot of Republicans have stood up and said, this is a bad idea, Senator. You need to stop it. You need to back off. Some of them have, but clearly he's not feeling the heat. I asked Tuberville a few weeks ago, are you feeling any pressure from your party to back off? And he said, no, zero. That is a direct quote.
All right. Sahil, thank you so much.
Let's get you some international headlines now. North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles this morning, just after a U.S. sub arrived in South Korea.
NBC's Megan Fitzgerald joins us from London with that and other world headlines. Megan, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Good to be with you. That's right. We start in North Korea, where we saw the North Koreans launch those 2 ballistic missiles yesterday. Of course, this is according to the South Korean military. Now, this happened hours after a U.S. nuclear-powered submarine arrived at a South Korean naval base. And keep in mind, tensions are already running high on the Korean peninsula. South Korea and the U.S. are actively working on its military readiness. Meanwhile, the effort to get back a U.S. soldier who bolted into North Korea last week is underway, though U.S. officials say there have not been any new talks with North Korean government over Private Travis King's case. And in Ecuador, the government declared a state of emergency in 2 provinces. So there's a few things going on here. You've got what's being called a security crisis after a mayor was killed, and then the country is seeing these uprisings in several different prisons. More than 90 prison guards are being held captive by inmates. These prisons are dangerous. Hundreds of inmates have been killed over the last several years. Typically, it's with members of different crime organizations. And guys, we are in countdown mode to the Paris Olympics, which is just 1 year away. The city is in the final stages of cleaning up, which includes the River Seine. For the last 100 years, swimming in the Seine was banned because of the filthy water, but they're cleaning it up. It's a project that's cost roughly $1.6 billion, and we will soon see Olympians swimming and diving into the water. Guys, it is expected to be the legacy of the Paris Olympics 2024.
That is going to be so cool to see, especially knowing the water is clean.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yes, right.
They'll tell us if it's not.
Big undertaking. All right, Megan, thank you so much.
Coming up, a tragedy on Martha's Vineyard that has left a close family friend of former President Obama dead.
We've got more on how he died, plus reaction from President Obama himself this morning. That's up next.
We're back now with a tragedy involving a close employee of former President Barack Obama.
Yeah, the body of 45-year-old Tafari Campbell, the Obama's longtime personal chef, was recovered after he drowned while paddleboarding near the family's home on Martha's Vineyard. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now with these tragic details. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good to be with you guys. Very tragic. This is a personal story for the Obamas, who say they considered Campbell a member of their family. Campbell started out as a chef at the White House and was then asked to continue with the family after President Obama left the Oval Office. Authorities say Mr. and Mrs. Obama were not present at the residence at the time of the accident.
This morning, tragedy near former President Obama's vacation home on Martha's Vineyard after the family's longtime personal chef and friend, Tafari Campbell, was found dead 100 feet from shore.
For a 40-year-old male, possible drowning. It's controlled to Edgartown Fire Water Rescue personnel.
The grim discovery Monday morning followed an hours-long search and rescue effort involving divers, boats, and helicopters that began the night before. Officials got word an adult male went missing after another paddleboarder saw he had gone into the water, appeared to briefly struggle to stay on the surface, and then submerged and did not resurface. It happened in the Edgartown Great Pond, with parts 8 feet deep.
It's on a paddleboard, no life preserver. This is last seen wearing all black. They have not had eye contact on him.
The 45-year-old who had been visiting the island was married with twin sons. His wife posting that she was, quote, heartbroken yesterday. Campbell had posted videos of himself practicing swimming on social media several years ago. He served as a personal employee of President Obama for years. The pair first met when Campbell worked as a talented sous chef at the White House.
What you do is you take the beer bottle and you let it fill all the way to the top.
In 2015, Campbell was in the kitchen when Savannah spent the day with President Obama at the White House for Today.
Tafari, you're just making a mess, man.
No, I just can't.
Look at that.
I can't get myself together.
You're a little nervous. Savannah's making you nervous.
In a statement, Mr. and Mrs. Obama say their family is heartbroken by the news, adding, Tafari was a beloved part of our family, creative and passionate about food and its ability to bring people together. We got to know him as a warm, fun, extraordinarily kind person who made all of our lives a little brighter.
And as we mentioned, authorities say there was a second paddleboarder on the pond with Campbell who saw him go underwater, but it's not clear who that person was. State authorities and Edgartown police are leading the investigation into the death. And guys, just a quick but important safety warning from experts. You should always wear your life jacket, especially on the open water, regardless of your age or swimming ability. A tragic story for that family. I feel for them.
Is. Emily, thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, is age truly just a number? After moments like this involving President Biden following his re-election campaign is addressing that elephant in the room with some new efforts aimed at easing voters' minds when it comes to his potential second term. We'll dig deeper after the break.
Plus, we know Gen Z is drinking less than older Americans, but why? And how is it affecting businesses like concert halls where alcohol is a big part of the revenue? We'll take a closer look next. Welcome back. This morning, we are learning more about President Biden's re-election campaign and about how his staff is making adjustments because of the president's age. He is now the oldest president ever elected and would be 82 years old on Inauguration Day in 2025 if he's re-elected. His age is coming into focus after he fell last month while riding his bicycle. That accident less than 2 weeks after he stumbled while handing out diplomas at the U.S. Air Force graduation. Well, now the Biden campaign is working to try and reassure voters that the president is fit for office as we get closer to election season. I'd say we're in election season. NBC News Digital senior White House reporter Peter Nicholas joins us now with more on his reporting. Peter, good morning. You've done a lot of extensive reporting about what the Biden campaign is doing. So explain to us some of the steps they're taking here to try and make the rigors of the campaign a little easier for him.
Well, one thing they're doing is trying to minimize the chances of another fall. These stumbles on the part of President Biden are embarrassing. They're a threat to his health and safety. And they reinforce concerns that voters already have that at 80 years old, he's simply too old for the job. That's what polling shows. So they're having him walk up a shorter staircase to get to Air Force One, as opposed to taking the longer staircase that leads to that iconic doorway at the top of Air Force One. So he's going up to the belly of the plane, and that reduces the risk of a fall. That's one thing. Some things might be familiar to anybody of a certain age. He's using a larger font on the teleprompter when he gives speeches, relying more on hand notes, and also note cards. And also, when he goes to foreign summit meetings, he tends to skip the after-work dinners. Now, this is an important part of the ritual of these summit meetings where foreign leaders schmooze, they work out differences, they talk in a less structured, more informal environment. President, in the last couple of trips, has been going back to the hotel. So those are some of the concessions we're seeing.
So, Peter, we have to point out, with all this attention on President Biden's age, his potential opponent next year, the former President Donald Trump, is less than 3 years younger than him. And he has also had some questions surrounding his health. I'm reminded of the Reagan-Mondale quip during the '84 debate years ago. Is the Biden campaign planning to focus on Trump's age and health at all?
Well, I think that does undercut the Republican argument that Biden is too old. Trump, as you point out, is 77 years old. There's been some questions about his fitness. There was a moment when he was walking down a ramp at West Point where he looked like he was shuffling, having some difficulty descending. Another moment where he drank a glass of water with using two hands. And at 77, it's going to be hard. He'll be hard pressed to make the argument that Biden is over the hill. That's what we're hearing from White House aides. So they feel also that Biden's experience is important as well, and that comes with age.
All right. Peter, thank you so much for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Let's get you some financial headlines now. TikTok is taking its app to the next level.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, so TikTok is taking on Instagram. The video app is adding the ability to share text-based posts with music and stickers similar to Instagram stories. Users can also add a background color and edit how the text appears. Posts have a 1,000 character limit, and other users can engage with the post very much like they do with video by stitching, duetting, and commenting. Twitter is rebranding X, both in the digital and physical worlds. The company owned by Elon Musk attempting yesterday to remove the Twitter sign from the side of its headquarters building in San Francisco. But the police showed up and put a stop to the activity temporarily. Authorities telling local media someone with Twitter had a work order to take down the sign, but didn't communicate that with security and the property owner. And Microsoft's latest Xbox collaboration is possibly its smelliest. It's teaming up with Paramount to promote the upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie by giving away a limited number of pizza-scented Xbox controllers. And they come in 4 versions, reflecting the style of the 4 turtles: Donatello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael. And there's a built-in scent diffuser that gives you a whiff of cheese and pepperoni while you play. You can only get one if you follow Xbox Game Pass on Twitter and retweet a post by August 13th for a chance to win. I am hungry.
Yeah, okay. I love the stylized photo of someone smelling the controller.
Yeah. Sounds like a nightmare, though. Who wants to always be smelling pizza?
Right.
You try to avoid that smell so then I don't have to eat it.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
You got it.
This morning, a new study is out with important signs of childhood allergies that parents need to look out for.
Yeah, this is from the journal Pediatrics, and it takes a look at an allergy pattern in kids called the allergic march, and it includes symptoms every parent should know so that their kids can be diagnosed early if necessary. NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres is here to help explain it all. Hi, Dr. Torres. Great to see you. So what is this allergy pattern, and what do parents need to know?
And good morning, Savannah and Joe. And I don't know how I follow a story on pizza-scented controllers. I mean, that's still stuck in my mind. Yeah. But this story is essentially about allergies in children and how the allergies in children can march through their age. As a matter of fact, they're calling it the allergic march. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia looked at 200,000 children in their medical records to see how allergies developed. What they found out is there was a certain pattern. You can see it right there. Started with eczema. Around 4 months is when they first started noticing that. 13 months, they noticed food allergies and asthma. Those food allergies included anaphylactic food allergies. At 26 months, environmental allergies, particularly things like hay fever. And then at 35 months, this thing called EOE, which is eosinophilic esophagitis, which is basically a kind of, it's a rare condition, but it can predispose them to other conditions, particularly allergic conditions. And the main thing for parents to understand here is start looking at these ages for these things. If you notice your child, 4 months old, start developing a rash that doesn't go away in a couple of days or seems to come back, have your doctor take a look at that.
So, yeah, Dr. John, I mean, earlier this year, the CDC reported more than 1 in 4 children have a seasonal allergy, eczema, or a food allergy. Will these allergies develop into something more serious over time? And if so, then at what age?
And, you know, when it comes to allergies, it's kind of a potpourri of all sorts of things going on here. One allergy could lead to another allergy. For example, children with eczema can develop asthma. They can develop food allergies on top of that. But also, when you look at children, like you mentioned, 1 in 5 end up with allergies. 1 in 5 end up having one type of allergy. 13% or a little bit above that end up having 2 or more of these types of allergies. And unfortunately, one can predispose them to having another one. In other words, again, if they have eczema, they could possibly get asthma or food allergies. They could start getting hay fever later in life as well. But the other thing with allergies, and this is why I call it potpourri, it can happen anytime. As an adult, we can develop hay fever or food allergies, so not necessarily restricted just to kids.
Dr. John, super quickly, as kids get older, what can parents do to help their kids get past this?
So the main thing is to look at the recommendations. American Academy of Pediatrics came out with recommendations for introducing peanuts into their diet, especially for high-risk children, 4 months to 6 months time period, and start making sure that they get introduced to those foods and those other substances. And if they start developing allergy-type symptoms or you think they have allergies, have their doctor look at them so they can get the treatment they need. Family history is a big thing as well. If it's in the family, potentially they could be getting it.
Dr. John Torres, important information. Thank you so much. When it comes to having a cold one with friends, it seems that younger Americans are more likely to go alcohol-free than some of their older counterparts.
That's according to a 2021 Gallup poll that said only 60% of people ages 18 to 34 drink, compared with 70% of people ages 35 to 54. For more on this, we are joined by Ty Shepis, who is a psychology professor at Texas State University. Ty, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, first of all, what are the biggest reasons you find members of Gen Z are drinking less? Is this a trend we expect to continue?
Well, this is a trend that really started earlier than Gen Z. We're talking about changes that start in the early 2000s and have slowly, over time, accumulated into much higher rates of not drinking at all in younger adults. So it's probably a process that's taken time to accumulate with attitudes changing and norms changing. As people look at their peers and their peers are less likely to drink. Some of this may get transmitted from older siblings and things like that. And so given the declines that we have seen since the early 2000s, it's very likely that this is a pretty long-term trend in this generation.
So there's an economic impact from this. I mean, just one example, concert venues have traditionally relied on alcohol sales from patrons. How are places like that being impacted by more Gen Zers staying sober?
Well, if your economic model as a music venue is to charge perhaps a low cover charge or no cover charge to get in to see the music, but then expecting to make that up on the back end through alcohol sales, we're probably going to see some adjustments to that model because you do have both less drinking at all among some young adults, and then lower rates of drinking among young adults who do drink. And this isn't universal. There are some folks, and we saw this during the pandemic, who actually accelerated their drinking, but those were folks who were probably drinking more to begin with. So as an economic model, it may just not be very viable to rely on alcohol sales if you are, for instance, a music venue.
All right, Ty Shepis, fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to gather around the kitchen table with a woman who truly means business.
That's right. She's built a cookware empire, even featuring collaborations with Selena Gomez, with one mission: bringing people together through a love of food. That is next on Morning News Now. We are back with the latest edition in our Women Mean Business series. This morning, we're highlighting the work of Shiza Shahid, the co-founder and co-CEO of kitchenware brand Our Place. And while her career has led her down many paths, Shahid always seems to cook up success. Here's her story.
Shiza Shahid grew up in Pakistan but went to university in the United States on a scholarship at Stanford University. Shahid's studies at Stanford introduced her to the business world and the concepts of startups and entrepreneurship, seeing female entrepreneurs for the first time. At 24, she quit her job in consulting to help co-found the Malala Fund, a nonprofit she created with her friend, education activist and Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai. Malala survived being shot by the Taliban for demanding girls access education. Now the organization campaigns for the same rights around the world. Now Shahid is shaking up the kitchenware space with Our Place. The high-end cookware brand is woman and BIPOC owned, and through Our Place, Shahid is making sure there's a place at the table, in the kitchen and the boardroom for women and minorities.
And we're so lucky that she joins us now in studio. Good morning. It's great to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Savannah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to talk. I want to start. So when we do Women Mean Business, we kind of like to, look at your life and career as a whole. So if you don't mind, if we could start back with growing up in Pakistan. I know that you credit your mother for being this catalyst for change. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that shaped you.
My mother shaped me in so many ways. She was born into a time and place where she didn't have many opportunities. She didn't get to pursue higher education or build a career or choose who she married. But she decided that she would do whatever it took to set her daughters free. So she and my father worked hard to build a life, to send us to the very best schools in the country. And one of the things my mother never did was let me into the kitchen. She never taught me to cook. And growing up, I thought it was because she was worried that I might get hurt in the kitchen. And it was only later on that I realized that by pushing me out of the kitchen, she was saying, go study, go work hard, go dream big and build something.
Which ultimately led you to the kitchen, but we'll get to that in just a minute. For viewers who just saw that piece there, they just learned about your relationship with Malala and also you beginning this Malala Fund as well. We also mentioned in there that you quit your job doing that. I'm wondering about that decision, how scary that was, what that moment in time was, and then also just tell us a little bit about your relationship with and the impact that Malala's had on you.
Yeah, it was very scary. When I quit my job, I was 22 years old. I was a year out of college. I had no savings. And here I was setting out to start a nonprofit. And I had no idea, how to move back to America. I had moved to Dubai at the time, how to pay for things, how to get it started. But my heart had a clear answer, and I've always tried in my life to be guided by my hopes and not by my fears. So I took the leap at 22 and never looked back. And I just believe there's moments in all of our lives where we have to decide who we are in our careers, in our relationships, in our values. This was one for me, and I'm so glad I took that leap of faith. And I've learned so much from Malala, from her courage, from her bravery, and from the way in which she shares her story to empower and uplift others.
Absolutely. Oh, so incredible. Okay, let's talk now about Our Place. First, just what was this like kicking this off? I mean, we also spoke just in that piece that our viewers just saw, just, about realizing, okay, female entrepreneurs, I can do this. What was it like to just get started, to get funding? How was it?
It was hard. We were rejected a lot of times. People didn't know what we were doing. They didn't fully believe that we could do it, but we kept going. We believed in the mission, and the mission was really around building a bigger table, because food is at the heart of our identity, our cultures, our communities. That's why the brand is called Our Place, not our kitchen or even our home, because cooking together, breaking bread together, really is about making place for ourselves and for each other at the table. And that early journey was really hard, so we bootstrapped to start, and then we raised a little bit of capital, and then we just got going. And we were fortunate to have a community that believed in what we were doing, that saw themselves represented in our brand. And we were fortunate to get the metrics that proved everybody wrong.
And you just mentioned this, but you have this real mission about creating this bigger table for everyone. What does that look like in your business?
You know, I'm an immigrant. Most of our team is female, BIPOC, and immigrant or first generation. And what that means is we're really building a table where all of us can show up, pull up a seat, break bread together. When I think about my most important memories, they almost always are around food. And even coming to this country, my partner and I literally found our place in America by cooking food and having people over to our dinner table. And at our place, that means celebrating all of our cultures and traditions loudly and proudly. And so last year, we highlighted 36 home cooking traditions on our social media, from Nowruz to Noche Buena to Shabbat to Ramadan. It means creating products that honor our traditions, and it means working with communities on the causes that we're passionate about, from food justice to immigration.
We just got about 15 seconds, so I know this is quick, but we always like in this series to ask your piece of advice for a young girl watching somewhere.
Don't make yourself small, dream big, don't shrink yourself. You can do this.
Shiza, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure actually a lot of our viewers probably have your products in our home, and a bonus that they are so beautiful to look at as well. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you here in studio with us. Congrats.
Love that conversation. Thank you, Savannah. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.